Hey, Sponsorship Nation, wanted to welcome you to another episode of Deck Diagnosis. My name is Ken Unger. I'm the president and founder of Charge, and this is the podcast where we help great organizations create fantastic decks. Our guest today is Doug Roby. Doug is the president and CEO of DDR Motorsports, and we're going to talk to him about his sponsorship deck. Welcome, Doug.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
You're welcome. Why don't you tell us a little about DDR Motorsports?
So DDR Motorsports is a small family-run team, primarily run by myself and my son. We race throughout New England, running on various tour-type modified series, if you will. Tour-type modified racing is very prominent here in the Northeast, but also stretches its legs all the way down through the Carolinas and Virginias. So very exciting, low slung cars, big wide tires, lots of noise. But yeah, we started the team back when the kids were young. They were actually running quarter midgets at the time at the little local track, which are go-karts. And we've progressed up to this point where I'm a lucky man to, kind of be in business with my son and enjoy a mutual hobby.
That's fantastic. So let's take a look at the sponsorship deck that you used to introduce DDR to prospective sponsors.
Sure.
So, Doug, this is the title slide of your sponsorship deck. Why don't you tell us a little about this particular slide?
Yeah. So again, trying to capture people's attention. This is our car. It's low slung, wide, mean looking. So just want to grab it out. Show us, what our primary focus is, and then to turn around and, introduce the team's logo, if you will, and then a little catch line that I put in there because, acceleration, right? We want to accelerate your brand. So acceleration and the definition is really where I put it there. Just a little quick catchphrase. That's
great. So let's talk a little about the title slide of a deck. So really, what we look at from in fact, the entire deck, but not only that, so the title slide is the place where you're going to grab the attention of the prospect and really cause them to want to know more about this potential sponsorship relationship. So the goal is to tell a story that's going to resonate with the prospect. So one question I have as we kind of talk about the story of DDR Motorsport: is the sponsor more interested in the race car or the people who watch the race car? So again, if we're thinking of this from the perspective of the potential sponsor, we want to ask ourselves, do they want to see the race car first, or do they want to see their potential customers, for example, watching the race car in a crowded grandstand at a great racetrack?
First thing I thought of when you said that is we've got plenty of pictures around. You can grab the picture of the car running by the grandstand with it packed.
Yeah, so that's one thing to consider. And then also on this title slide, asking yourself, that's a great tagline that you have and certainly makes sense in the context of a race team. But what does that do for a sponsor? Is that something that's going to cause the sponsor to look more highly upon this particular sponsorship deck? Or is it something that they either won't understand or they won't care about very much? So it's simply a question to ask yourself, because everything in this deck has to work really hard to persuade. So that's just one thing to think about.
Right. You got the 5-second rule, right?
Exactly. So tell us a little about this slide.
So this is a quick introduction of, who we are. Shows a couple of pictures of myself and my son. Shows us working together. Again, trying to do the family deal. There's the car, and then on the bottom, kind of just a really high level of, who we are, what the team is, family based, when it started, and what we're doing now.
That's great. And as I read this, what really resonated with me was the father-son story of your race team. So, for example, DDR stands for Doug and Derek Roby, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so what we recommend is that people use headlines for slides to shout their story. And I really think the story of this particular slide is not necessarily about a race team called DDR Motorsports, but DDR is really a father-son story. That really resonated with me And it's about the bond that you have with your son. And in fact, I think your daughter started racing with you when you first
And
started
she
the
did.
team.
She's still involved in other ways. She just doesn't drive anymore.
So this is actually a family affair where the entire family is finding a way to participate in the sport together. So it's about family values. It's about, love and commitment and all those things that make families so special. So perhaps using a headline about the fact that this is a family team, right? This is a team of a family, not just DDR Motorsports, and really referencing, explicitly, that's where you get the team name. So
Yep.
that's where DDR comes from. So I also think it's important when there's this much text on a slide to not let really important things get buried. So one of the things that was really important to me was you started this team in 2004. I mean, that's super impressive that you've been around for basically 19 years doing this. And that's really important to sponsors. Sponsors love stability because they're making an investment in your team. So really punching the fact that this is a long-standing team commitment. On the flip side, as you go through kind of the background, it's not necessarily relevant that you do other jobs during the day, because again, asking yourself what is important to a potential sponsor, they might not care what you do during the day. They really care about the race team and how that could be an excellent marketing platform for them.
Cool. So how would you emphasize the time, the 2004, if you will?
So the kinds of things you could do, let's tell you, that's a great question. So in terms of these photos, there's a picture of you, there's a picture of your son. I think I would, if you have the photos, more of things of the family together at the racetrack,
Okay.
right? So working on a car together, being at the racetrack together, rather than father image, son image, father and son image, and even better, if other family members are with you working on the team to create that imagery too. In
So
terms of
really heavily focused both visually and text-based on the family side.
yeah, I mean, it's the old saying of pictures worth 1,000 words, and that's absolutely true. So you have to make your photos and images work as hard as the words and the headlines work. So speaking of headlines, you asked how to accentuate certain things. You could start to edit out some of this text if you feel it isn't working as hard as it could be working to tell your team story, so that you can expand through subheadlines, founded in 2004 or 19 years and counting, something that really kind of speaks in shorthand, but something that a sponsor will readily recognize. An important point about this slide, that it's a family team, it's long-standing, it has stability, and it's about a family's commitment to each other in a family sport.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. So tell us about this ROI opportunities.
So in my research throughout the various years, as you well noted, and I hadn't thought about it as almost 19 years of racing. That's kind of creeped up on me, if you will. There's always finding different ways to make it about the sponsor, not about me. So direct interaction, right? That's definitely fan fest, autograph sessions, car shows, etc. Business to business relationships, that's always been well documented. And then of course recently, over the last several years, we've got all this content creation. So trying to highlight the most important and prevalent things that that we could bring. At the same time, also noting in the corner that we can do other things, right? This is just kind of the whet the appetite type deal, kind of see what's out there, give a little sample of it. I mean, we have some videos, we have a bunch of in-car videos, we have a bunch of outside car videos, different things. The Fan Fest, when he races the TQ, shows up. There's people come down onto the racetrack and stuff. So kind of visually showing and explaining a little bit of some of the basic components that we can bring to them.
Yeah, I really like this slide a lot, and I thought it did a lot of good things. So, for example, we always recommend that you give sponsors ideas and examples of what they can do. And you've done that here. You've kind of talked about using tailored content, interacting with their customers, engaging in business to business. So I thought this was a really good slide. I also appreciated the fact in that top corner, you talked about, hey, listen, these are some ideas, but we can customize it as well. So I thought that it was a really good slide from a customization and ideas perspective. The one thing that was interesting, though, as it went through the entire deck, is this talked about ways for the sponsor to use the sponsorship, but what it didn't do is the deck didn't reference the elements of your offer. So your offer is actually those things that you are giving to the sponsor in exchange for the sponsorship. Now, a deck is not as detailed as a proposal. So in that proposal, you're going to detail, we're going to give you a logo here. We're going to give you mention on our website here. We're going to tweet about you 3 times a week or a weekend. But there should be at least some indication of how the sponsor can interact with the sponsorship besides these ROI and activation opportunities. Kind of the core of the sponsorship in terms of logo identification on your car and things like that. I think somewhere in the deck you have to indicate, even if it's general, the types of things that the sponsor would get potentially if they engaged in a relationship with you.
Okay, yeah, I can see that, and I know with one of our current sponsors, that was one of the deals. He wanted a lot of media and rights to pictures and stuff and whatnot. So it's for his marketing. So yeah, I can see that as being very beneficial.
You can even create that as a separate slide, right? Because this slide
That's
works.
what I was thinking. Yes.
Yeah. It absolutely works as the ROI/activation slide. You can create one called, our offer, or what a sponsor could receive.
Yeah. Say sample offerings maybe as the next slide.
So this next point again, when something is this dense in text, you got to be careful, because I found like pure solid 24 karat gold buried in the middle of the slide, among other sentences. And that is, it is said that racing fans are the most loyal sports fans and will go out of their way to support a sponsor in racing. Right. That is absolutely true. And that loyalty, the fact that the fans of your team will be more likely to use the products or services of your sponsor, holy cow, that is pure gold. Lift that out, call that out. There are citations to it. I've seen a number of studies, fan surveys and such, that have verified that in various series, including NASCAR. But that is like absolute gold. So be careful not to bury things like that are just so important.
Yeah, no, I actually absolutely agree. Earlier in my career, I mean, I've been racing personally for 30 plus years with various teams, and was involved in a sponsorship program where we were doing frozen pizza, and the return on investment for those customers were crazy. They wouldn't have bought it other than it was, on a race car, on a modified that they loved. And in the end, when I found out the numbers on the return on investment, it was just incredible. We're talking a campaign that returned 40% of their coupons.
Right. So like something like that shouldn't be left to a conversation. That should be, that could even be its own slide.
Yeah.
That's such a vital thing. And you could also reference your experience, right? I mean, it's something
that's what I was thinking. Yes.
Yeah. So, but like that, here's this gold nugget. Don't hide it. So that, just a thought.
Yep. Cool.
Well, tell us about, this is the audience page. Love the audience page. Tell us a little about it.
Yeah, so just digging through research, local tracks around here, found some stats backed up by NASCAR. So a lot of the local tracks are NASCAR sanctioned. So they put out a lot of data, and it was nice. It was nice to be able to see this, this demographics broken down by gender and income, ages. I like the one about the events attended per season myself. Seeing that many people, over 25%, attend that many. So I think this is really, important to show that it's not a one and done. It's got a lot of, a lot of traction to it. And then the other side of it is how far people are willing to travel. Within 20 miles. I think in one of my other slides, it shows the tracks that we are planning on visiting in 2023. So if we started to, dig a little deeper into that and then looked at how far and what the major metropolises are around it, it can be very beneficial.
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it. And what's interesting about what you just said, remember we talked at the top about telling a story?
Mm-hmm.
Like you just told a story about the data, but that story should be referenced within the slide itself. So again, using headlines, using call outs, don't just tell them who they will reach, tell them a story about who they will reach. Now, looking at the gender, I think that it's really important to note that this is pretty good for sports because usually gender skews more male. And this is close. It's 51-49 is the general population, and 60-40 is not bad compared to other sports, which are very male heavy. So, I mean, I think it's something to punch that it's good distribution between male and female. Then on the age, I think you nailed it. But the one thing that I noticed is that the fans that you'll be reaching are younger than the general population. So right now, in terms of 55 and older, it skews much heavier than the data that we're seeing here. Mm-hmm. So you could tell that story again through a subheadline or a call out that your audience is younger than the general population. I think you absolutely nailed it when you talked about how far they're going to travel. And this is something that we're going to punch a little more later in the deck, but something that you could reference here. So here's an interesting statistic comparing potential other opportunities that a sponsor could have to yours. So the average NFL fan will only travel about 15 miles.
Wow.
Your fans are traveling more than 50 miles, not 15 miles, 50 miles. So here's
of them.
Exactly. So by the time you look at all the ones that travel more than 15 miles, here's what happens. The potential service area for your sponsor increases. So now you have more businesses that may be good candidates for you because the potential area where their customers live is greater than, say, around Gillette Stadium, for the Patriots. So
and that's key for me because of the travel that we do within New England. And it's really the target that I'm trying. My personal target is not so much the local mom and pop at this point. Is I want to get to the regional, and that helps that.
Exactly. So we really like when demographics they work hard for you. Now, when we look at a slide like this, there are two different aspects that are not here but could be here, and that's we look for psychographics. Yep. The psychographics are like, what are the hobbies of your fans? What do they value? What do they do with their free time? And again, that could be a separate slide because you don't want to make your slide too crowded.
Right.
But psychographics are really good because they leave even more breadcrumbs for a sponsor about whether they see a fit between their customers and your audience. The other thing is if you have the buying habits of your fans, that's really important too, that 30% are within are in the market for a new car within 3 months. Now all of a sudden car dealers are interested in talking to you, or they're going to buy a kitchen appliance within 6 months. Now all of a sudden big box retailers want to talk to you. So the psychographics and buying habits are a nice add-on to this demographic, but I think you've done a really good job of making this work. But there are ways you can really bring it to life even more.
Yeah. Excellent. And that's what I'm looking for. Just enhance it, make people go, wow, right? The wow factor.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh my gosh, I have to take advantage of this opportunity because my customers are there. And so this slide, what are you trying to do with this slide, Doug?
So this slide shows the two primary series that we run, the Modified Racing Series and the Monaco Tri-Track Racing Series. Both of them run the same types of cars. Similar tracks. They do cross tracks, I think, twice in a year. But they complement each other. A lot of the guys run both of the series with that. So together, it's a I don't know, a dozen racers or so, give or take, and then filter some others in there. The other side of it is just kind of showing the audience. Live audience is 5,000 to 7,000 people average. I've got peaks in there that run it up and numbers it down. And then I want to show that each of those divisions, they have a pretty good following throughout the area. Both of it. And then on the bottom, I threw in both my son and in the team's social followings with that. So just kind of showing that, there's a lot of impressions out there, showing what we are, who we support, and stuff like that. So not a big fan lately of a lot of the social media beliefs and impressions, but a lot of people are. So I got to make sure that we cover it in.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of sponsors live or die by that number. And what I really like about this slide is it was really informative. A lot of sponsors want this data, and some decks kind of make them work for it, or actually leave this out and have the sponsor look for this data, especially like the size and scope of your social media channels. I really like the fact that you talked about kind of the impressions in general for those series. And I think that's even because you just said it. I think it's worthy of a headline. Again, we want to make this slide work. And so something to the effect of, a sizable fan base in New England for these series. And anyone who knows about motorsports knows that, modifieds rule New England. And so these numbers verify that. So I would, sing it from the rooftops in terms of making that work for this slide. But overall, I really like this slide a lot.
Is the description too much on the series?
No, not necessarily, because I think, rather than force them to go to the website for those series, you kind of do a nice job of describing it, because there are two different series. You will get that question. So you've just headed that off. You've named the series, included their logo, and described each one. So I think that's fine.
Cool.
And now this slide, the geographic reach.
Yep. And Google Maps is a wonderful place. I grabbed it, did a save of all the racetracks that we plan on, attending, kind of listed where they are and their location, and just a quick, simple, graphical look of where we're going to be.
Yeah, I like this slide. Maps are really good. So many people are visual learners, sponsors no exception. They know where their customers live and work. So you've kind of given them the map straight out, because they might not know, where Claremont Speedway is or Stafford Motor Speedway.
Especially if I'm talking to somebody out of the Midwest.
Yeah, so exactly. So you've described it, but a couple things. The most important aspect of this slide is in like 6 to 4-point type at the top of it. And that's this has very, very good reach in New England.
It needs a big headline is what you're saying.
It needs a big headline. It is strong in New England. And if you notice what I did around each racetrack,
I like it. Yeah, I like it.
Is you've kind of like, how far they're traveling. So I don't want that little dot around Stafford. I want the fact that they're going to travel far and wide to come to Stafford Motor Speedway. So
overlap of those circles is really, really important.
Exactly. So look at the state of Massachusetts, right?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, when you do that, and this is an accurate portrayal based on the data that you have, right? This isn't opinion, this is data. Now, all of a sudden, the potential ambit of the sponsors that you could talk to is increased, because now companies that do business all across New England see you as a more relevant offer, as opposed to one little dot on a map that might not cover enough territory for them.
I like it. Yeah, that's enlightening for sure.
Yeah, this could be a really powerful slide, but I love what you did with the map. I just think we can really punch this. And now the final slide.
That's it. Just the kid going at it. I mean, that's what he does, and just again showing it shows speed. I think this is probably the one that we talked about for the first deck, right? Using something similar to that. I think I have one with the checkered flag flying over in front of him. Might even be better. Maybe I just swap that, right? Put the checkered flag one at the end because it closes out. Something like this up front.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's just my contact information, who we're already partnering with, and just a quick little, catchy phrase. Don't be caught looking in the mirror.
Yeah, I like it all. I especially like the image. There are people, you could tell there are people in the grandstand. It conveys speed, which is kind of one of the prime, kind of elements of auto racing. I like the fact that you included your specific content, information right there on the deck. But there's one thing, because I saw the great sponsors that you have.
Yeah.
Is to the extent either these sponsors or your past sponsors can offer either case studies of how they used your sponsorship successfully, or testimonials about you or Derek or the team. I think that is such a powerful tool, because when people hear about past successes, it decreases the risk of doing a sponsorship with you, because they know you have this track record. Again, pun intended, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
and so if there's any element of case studies or testimonials that you can add around either these partners or past partners, again, that's going to amp up the power of your deck tremendously.
It's funny you mentioned that, because that's actually a discussion that we had at lunch today, me and my son, about getting some testimonials. It was more so for a proposal that we need to do than so much on the deck. Yeah, I guess, to me, if I'm looking at this, and I know from my research and stuff, the deck should be quick, right? I think in one of your other videos you said it was an 8-second deal. So when you flip into that page, you got 8 seconds, or you flip into the deck, whatever, etc. So quick 1 and 2 lines into this deck, and then the further ones being used in a proposal is kind of how I'm taking. Maybe that's the best way to position it.
Exactly. I've said it's not dissimilar to how we surf the web, right?
Right.
We have about 8 seconds to determine the relevance to us, and then we are gone.
Yeah.
And so grab them, establish relevance, establish a reason for them to turn the page. And then by the time they get to this slide, it's really important to have given them a reason to call you. Because, so many of these companies are just bombarded with sponsorship requests that you not only have to establish relevancy, you have to differentiate from all the other people seeking sponsorship. So just something to keep in mind. And I think you're on your way to do that. So I really like what you've done here, Doug.
Thank you. It's compliments are, well, love to hear a good compliment. We work hard around here, for sure.
Well, we always say with deck building, it's all about continuous improvement. So I've known many people, including me, that have used sponsorship decks over a period of years, and you just keep improving them year after year after year. New data, fresh data, but a new approach, right? To you live and learn,
Right.
and as you learn what sponsors need and want, you can adjust your deck to do that. Well,
I really only have one follow-on question that I'd
yeah.
like to, I think is relevant. Timing of presenting this deck, do people generally do it in a meeting, follow up on a meeting, ahead of getting a meeting? I'm assuming it varies, but what's kind of the general gist of that?
Yeah, so this is all part of the prospecting process, right? So you're going to do in the prospecting process, you're going to establish kind of who's a good fit for you. And you're going to do enough research on your target that to a certain extent what problem they need to solve, how you could help them solve it. So you have kind of going in, not just a cold email like, hey, I got your name from a directory, you've never heard of me, but here's my deck about, a race team that, may not mean anything to you. You've done your research up front. So your cover email, if you contact them by email, would introduce yourself, establish why you're contacting them, say why you think that what you offer can help them with a business challenge that they have. And as an introduction, I've attached my sponsorship, the deck, the marketing deck. You don't have to call it a sponsorship deck at that point.
Yeah.
The marketing deck that introduces my team to potential partners. I hope you find this of value. I would look forward to continuing this conversation via telephone or meeting or Zoom. Best
Okay.
regards, Doug.
So a warm introduction versus a cold calling type email.
Yeah, it's okay to send a cold email, but as long as there's context, right? No one, I mean, you and I get that every day. Like,
Oh, yeah.
do we read the cold emails that we get that are clearly not meant for us? Nope.
Right. No.
No,
Sure.
that's train it to go to junk or delete it. So
Yeah.
do something. And I think, people often complain about how time intensive it is, but it pays off down the road, and not, you could send out 50 of those and they're instantly deleted, versus you send out 5 and they take a lot of time, but one of them calls you back.
Yeah. Yeah. Get your value out of it for sure.
But yeah, I'd include it in that warm introduction with a little bit of research, and then hopefully you've baited the hook enough that they
There
call
you go. Cool.
No, that's great. I appreciate you being a guest on Deck Diagnosis. So, like our others, we want you to take your great organization, create a fantastic deck, and sell lots of sponsorship.
So do I. The more sponsorship, the more racing. So it makes us all happy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Doug. Good luck, and I'll see you at the racetrack.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ken. Have a great evening.
Okay.